Right, come on, I need to do something really embarrassing now. I'm talking about myself. Hi, my name's Tom. I'm an ecologist, and over the last year or so I've created a nature-based educational Instagram account called Natureman Tom, and really just to promote nature in the UK, talk about interesting concepts, really big into trees. I think it's really important to engage with everyone, but especially young people, the next generation, to really, care about nature, because in reality they're the people who are going to, afford the projects. This is going to sound a bit strange, but I think the biggest issue that we face is that the lack of awareness of what the current situation in the UK from the general public. We are one of the most nature depleted countries in the UK, which means our environment, our biodiversity is incredibly vulnerable to any kind of change, and we are seeing massive species declines simply because of the situation that we're in. I think this change, habitat restoration, restoring the environment, we can do it. It's easily done within 100 years, but people don't realise what we've got. But when if you're looking at a hedgerow or a bush, or you're not seeing the individual plants. You're just seeing green. So we don't differentiate between different plant species, which is actually crazy, really, because for all of human history, being able to identify different plants literally was the matter of life and death. And so plant identification is inbuilt into all of us, and we have some of the best eyes in the animal kingdom made for it. We're made to identify plants, and yet we don't do that anymore because we don't need to. And so I think that's why plant identification and overcoming that kind of plant blindness is such an important thing, because once you know what something is, you give meaning to it, and then you can't really help but then care about it. You want to plant native plants because you want to attract native species, you want to restore our environment. Of course, you can have some non-native plants in your garden, but do your research. If you're going to plant a non-native plant, make sure that it's beneficial to wildlife. Of course, the worst one is rhododendron. Rhododendron it's a beautiful flowering shrub, but as we all know, it's incredibly invasive. I think around 3% of our woodland roughly contains rhododendron, which is pretty worrying. And I think what's most shocking is that you can buy it in the garden centre. You've got one of the most invasive plants that loves this climate, and yet people buy it in their garden centres, and they often have no idea. And that's kind of what I also want to talk about. Educating people and people being aware of what they're putting in their garden, really. Secondly, pesticides. Don't use them. Why would you want to introduce a toxic compound or element into your garden or balcony when what you're trying to do is increase that garden's biodiversity? And of course, the problem with pesticides, yes, they might get rid of a specific pest. You could have a pest outbreak, which obviously no one wants, but they're not pest specific. They will just kill most things that come in contact, so that will only further reduce the biodiversity of your garden, your balcony, whatever you have. And then that actually creates, in many cases, the perfect conditions for future pest outbreaks, because if you have low biodiversity in your garden, then something is going to take a hold, and that often is the very thing that you're fighting against. And then finally, I would say wild spaces. I think in the UK we're obsessed with neat, tidy areas, and that's fine, but it's really important to have areas that are wild as well. And having a wildflower meadow or a pond, or just an area that you leave that you don't even have to do any work to it. You just let that be. That creates habitats for insects to survive, and then continue thriving, really.